Looks like it did. So welcome everyone. I'm gonna, let's also share screen right now so you can have a look. Two open. Let's do one. Okay. So hopefully you can all see that. And what I'm going to do, it will let me do it. Oh, it's going to be really slow now. Right, hang on. Sorry, everyone. And I can't seem to make it move. Oh, we go. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to start talking and hope that it will let me go through the slides. So welcome everyone to our first webinar session, Kindling Farm webinar session. We've got a few other sessions that are also going to be really exciting. So I do recommend looking out for those ones because they've got some people who are going to be talking us through how we could develop Kindling Farm, how we can develop the farm that we found, Barnhay Farm, into our vision of some of the different elements that we want to do. So that'll be really exciting. I'm going to what I'm going to do for now, I'm going to really try to keep the whole session to an hour, but that'll include questions. So I'm going to kind of try and give a good amount of time for questions at the end, but I will I'll get excited and ramble on, so feel free to tell me to be quiet at some point. But basically what I'm going to do is give you just a little bit about our background, a bit about the vision of Kindling Farm, and then some information about how we've got to where we have, because it's been quite a journey. Even though we've only just found the farm, it's actually been quite a journey to get to this point. And then I'll talk to you a bit more about what's next, including the community shares campaign that we're running at the moment. So this is just basically to give you a little bit of an idea of where we're coming from. The reason that we started the work that we do, because we've been working on food and farming projects for and initiatives for over a decade now. And the reason that we do what we do is because we looked at the mainstream food system and felt like it was hugely destructive in terms of its impact on climate and biodiversity, but also in terms of farmers who are trying to make a livelihood from farming, and people who can't afford to, feel at times they can't afford to feed their own families, never mind choose organic food. And we just felt like this was a completely topsy-turvy system, and that there was a way that we could create something much better, and that we wanted to show how to do that, and that the whole model from changing from the way we produce food to how people buy it and how people engage in food, and how to make that accessible. So that's kind of where we were coming from. Our background, so the way we then started working on that in a practical way, was that we established the UK's first Farm Start, which is a training program for new farmers, and we basically copied from the States, and France run an amazing one as well. And we do a short commercial growers course. So we've trained in those two different programs. We've trained around 200 people in commercial, organic, horticulture and vegetable production. We do that at a place called Woodcock Community Food Hub. So we've got that's in Stockport. We run a market garden there, the training scheme for new growers, and also we do lots of community engagement. It's a really great site because it's the old place where they raised all of the bedding plants for the parks in Stockport and in Greater Manchester. So it's based in a real residential area. There's lots of people walking past. There's lots of opportunities to engage people, and we do that through volunteering and lots of events about wildlife and farming and food, which is great. We also we do a wellbeing program there, so that has been through people referred by GPs for lots of different reasons, and we do a session of growing session and then cooking food together and then eating that meal together. And then people would take a veg bag and sort of practice doing those recipes, seasonal recipes, and come back and talk about it. And in the last year, what we found is that that all of the people that started being referred were refugees who were living in so-called temporary accommodation in hotels in Stockport, and were ending up being there for like, some of them for over a year, and not having access to a kitchen at all. So it was actually really, it was great for them because they were, you know, able to cook and be outside, and it was great for us because they were teaching us really amazing Kurdish and Afghanistan recipes. So it's been really amazing experience. And then we also, a couple of years ago, we got some funding to run, we didn't yet have the farm, but a really great funding opportunity came up. And we decided that we could create the agroforestry system for the farm before we got the farm. And we did that by teaching people how to graft fruit trees, and decided to do heritage fruit trees. So whereas in supermarkets you'll see kind of 4 or so varieties of apple and plum and whatever, we decided to look for all of the heritage fruit varieties in the northwest, and then a bit further afield, and grafted 40 different varieties of apple, and lots of different fruits as well, and taught people how to do that, because we try and do everything training people in those skills, and they can do themselves. And then they would take a fruit tree, but we ended up with a good few thousand fruit trees for the agroforestry system at Barnhay Farm as well. What we always teach our farm starters, the people we train up in growing in food production, is that you have to start with your market. If you don't grow your market at the same time as you're growing your growing skills, then you won't be able to make a living from it. And it sounds really obvious, but there are a lot, you know, I think it can also be really hard because it's so much to do learning how to grow. So what we've done over the last decade is grow both our relationship with buyers in Manchester and in Greater Manchester, but also set up our own VegBot scheme called VegBots People, and we now supply 370 families, but are looking to expand that to 1,000 or more, which is now really possible, feels really possible now that we've got Kindling Farm. And we supply the University of Manchester. We've always worked really closely with them, and so they come do volunteering as well. So it feels like, as the same with our VegBot scheme, everything we do is about kind of not just buying our veg, but being involved in that whole relationship, learning where it comes from, learning about the growers and all that sort of thing. And then the last thing on this slide, Bridge 5 Mill, it seems a little bit nothing to do with this, but actually it's something that Chris and I, who's the other founder of of Kindling Farm, were involved in setting up 20 or so years ago, and it's a 5-storey mill in Ancoats, where it's now like a real thriving hub with different campaign groups and community organisations based there and using it for sustainable living events. And it was very useful, definitely, for talking to the bank in terms of asking them to lend us money, because it was a capital project and revenue project that we've run since then, or been involved in running, and that still exists and is thriving. So that's great. The need for Kindling Farm, I won't talk much about this because I assume that a lot of people, it's why you're interested in it, but basically it's about, as I said, it was looking at the destruction that the food and farming system was causing, and kind of looking at, we just actually can't carry on business as usual in food and farming. We have to farm and eat in a different way to stop soil erosion, for our own health, and for biodiversity and climate. And what we felt was that we needed more examples of that, especially in the northwest. There's kind of some quite interesting things down in the southwest, but also we needed to make sure it wasn't just about producing good food for people that can afford it, but about trying to work out how to make that socially just, both for the farmers and for the people eating their food. So on to Kindling Farm. So basically the vision for Kindling Farm is kind of about doing what we do in Greater Manchester, but doing it on a larger scale, and it's always been the vision. So we've always hoped that we can scale up everything we do, so we would have the food production, for example. We need a greater volume of food produced in this area. There's not enough organic veg producers on this scale in the northwest, and we need to grow the markets at the same time, obviously. And also we need we've kind of looked at various different kinds of farming and ways of growing, and it just feels like we work with a lot of farmers who aren't necessarily organic farmers, but I've yet to meet a farmer who doesn't care about the land that they're farming. And so for us, it's not about judging people and judging farmers and saying you're not farming in, you're not farming in the right way, this is how to do it. It's about all of us coming together and learning together, how do we farm in a better way, and learning from each other. So one of the examples we saw was agroforestry, which is where you have trees every 27 or so meters, and fruit trees, or any, some people have hazel trees or willow trees or whatever. We will use their heritage fruit trees that we grafted a couple of years ago, and then between those grow vegetables and cereals. Excuse me. And it's just it's an amazing way of farming. I'm going to actually skip to the next slide to show you. So this was one of the farms that we visited down in Suffolk, Wakelands Farm, and it just showed, for me, it's like, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you farm in this way? It's this haven of biodiversity. It helps hold on to the soil, to stop soil erosion. It helps manage water. It helps grow your veg because it sort of shields it from the wind. It's like a wind break. It's just a really incredible way of farming. It can sequester carbon through the trees, so it's just really incredible. So part of the vision, a large part of the vision, is about having an example of agroforestry and showing that it can work, and also practicing that. But it's also about kind of engaging people in that way of farming and looking at, okay, well, is this the best way to farm, or should we try and farm in this way, or are you kind of doing experiments? And so at the moment we've just ordered a big load of green manure seed and are about to plant that out just to kind of improve the health of the soil. And we've talked to people in the University of Manchester about looking at, if you take a farm that has been farmed with chemicals, chemical fertilizer and herbicides and large machinery, and then you throw all these things at it, what happens, and how quickly does it regenerate in terms of biodiversity, in terms of soil health? So we're hoping to do lots of kind of looking at what works, what doesn't, what's the impact of it, and taking lots of measurements of everything, counting worms and testing soil at the moment. And then the other thing, the longer term plans, as say, building the market. So lots of people that we've been talking to in the local community are really keen for us to have a farm shop, for example. We've definitely looked at that as part of our social enterprise hub, where we would add value to the food. So possibly a bakery or a microbrewery or somewhere for turning things into soups or jams, or so adding value to the food, but also providing more employment for people who'd be interested in setting up those local enterprises as well. And then the training we would carry on. So we would still carry on the training in Manchester at the market garden level, but we would be able to offer large, like field scale training as well, and training in agroforestry, and really complement what we do at both places. And then I'll show you in a bit. I'm going to do the virtual tour of Barnhay Farm, but there's lots of buildings, there's lots of potential. And one of the things we also wanted to do again was doing the sort of social change work, so looking at how do we support people to change the system, not just the food and farming system, but society as a whole, to create a kind of fairer and more just way of living. One of the sessions we're doing actually is on kind of renewable energies and how to try and make the farm as eco as possible, and a lot of that we would look to do through training, similarly as well, how we did with Bridge 5 Mill and developing that. So the criteria that we were looking for this farm, how were we, what were we looking for in a farm to create this vision? We were looking for around 100 acres. We did one of the original farms we looked at was 120 acres, and this farm that we're on now is 77 acres, so it's a little bit smaller, but it was kind of around that size. We definitely wanted there to be a farmhouse and buildings, and the land. Some of the farms that we looked at were quite hilly, and I kind of got a little bit of a thing, maybe we should try and grow veg on in the hills, because that was all the farms that seemed to be coming up, and everyone was like, that's such a bad idea. So yeah, so part of our criteria is definitely that we needed there to be flat land so that we could grow veg and arable. We wanted it, because of all the work that we've been doing over the last decade, we wanted it to be within 50 miles of Greater Manchester, both for our access to markets and also because our networks of support are there and our relationships are there. That's the below 100 meters was what the thing that everyone put on me, that we couldn't go any higher than that. And yeah, being able for it to be easy to get to was really, really important. Oops, sorry, I've gone backwards. We also needed, so that we did look at some land that had no buildings on, and realised that actually that would have been too difficult, because one of the issues for farmers is that if you can't, it's really hard to make a living if you can't live on the land, and also for all of our plans in the future. So that felt very important to us. That there's lots of things around the sporting and mineral rights that would kind of affect the work that we do. And we wanted to be able to greatly improve. We didn't want to take on organic land that was already organic, because we felt it was really important to be converting new land to organic, and also being able to improve biodiversity. Because if we took something on that already was doing that in a large way, we wouldn't have as much impact. We needed also to be able to have access to water, and we were looking for vacant possession. Again, at one point we were discussing with a farmer the potential of someone staying on the farm, which we wanted to be able to support them to do that, one of the family members, but it did get really complicated in the end, and so we got advice for vacant possession. So the process of finding a farm, basically so we got approached by a farmer in 2019, and who wanted to sell us their farm, and that's why we ran our first community shares campaign in 2021, because we had a farm that we were hoping to buy. But in the middle of that campaign, the farmer realised that he couldn't sell his farm to us for various reasons, to do with family, which was absolutely fine. And we decided to we discussed it quite a lot and decided to carry on with the campaign, because we felt like unless we had some financial backing, we would never be able to respond if a farm came up on the market. So we were kind of, and this is one of the issues with the current farming system, is that unless you are born into farming, or you are from a very wealthy background, it's really hard to access land. So it's really hard to get into farming. And so part of what we were doing was trying to make land accessible. And so we said that to our investors, expecting quite a few people to pull out because there was no farm in the near future necessarily. And actually most people stayed by us, stuck with us, which is amazing. So we then spent the last sort of 18 months looking for a farm. We got a land agent in the end. We asked a land agent who had time to go out and look for a farm and had the experience. And he, at one point at our last AGM, basically said there are hardly any farms coming up onto the market. And most of them are getting bought up. It was by Homebase is buying up a lot of land at the moment in Preston and everywhere we were looking, that it was getting bought up. And they were just ready with the cash and could buy large amounts of land, which we couldn't do, even though we had some cash from the community shares campaign. So he also said really interestingly, if you're in the southeast of the country, there would be a lot more farms available. However, in the northwest, he said that he felt that a lot of farmers were quite emotionally attached to their land, and he said in some ways that's great for you, because when a farm does become available, someone will love your vision and love your story. But the hard thing is that it doesn't come up very often. And that actually proved to be true with this farm, with Barnhay Farm. So in November 2023, Barnhay Farm came onto the market, and we first went to visit it as like the day after it came onto the market, and completed purchase on the 30th of March, amazingly. So it was a really tight time scale. So this is Barnhay Farm in the background. This is some of our original investors. And what I'm going to do is very quickly, I'm worried I'm going over time, but very quickly just talk you through some of why this met some of the criteria for us. So it's with actually 30 miles from Manchester, so that's great. It was well within that criteria. We weren't sure about it, first of all, because it was much closer to Liverpool than Manchester, and that kind of felt strange to people who had been, who had been working in Greater Manchester all the time. However, when we got there, it actually felt perfect, because it is really easily accessible from Manchester, but also opens up all these other potential markets and other people to work with, other people to engage as well. It's right next to, it's actually 1.5 miles away from a train station. You can get a direct train from Oxford Road train station in Manchester, and also there's a bus stop that takes you into Liverpool, which is amazing. Like for £2 single. So the terrain very flat, you can see from here. This is an aerial view of the farm. The soil, so we did a lot when we first went to visit, a lot of digging holes. We're still doing a lot of digging holes, but did a lot of digging holes, and we also got expert advice. Stu, who's down there with his hands in the soil, is a grower, and he's also one of our directors, which is great, but he felt a bit worried about having the kind of all the responsibility for saying whether the soil was good enough. So we got another grower who has a huge brain and PhD in soil science to come and have a look at it, and also chatted to various experts, and they felt like it was great. And also the neighbours, talked to the neighbours, and they said the soil was really good around here. It has some a little, not as much clay content as we thought originally, but enough to sort of hold on to some of the nutrients needed. But yeah, it's really good soil. Access, so as I say, it's really easy to get to it. You can, and it's also got 2 access points. The first access point is on just after a little bit of a curve, so that's not great, curve in the road, but then there's one further on. Just to explain as well, the caravan storage we've taken over from the business. It was the original owners had it as a business, just storage, and it just is great way for us to be earning income in this first year, particularly to help us pay the mortgage when we're kind of getting established. And it's actually been a great way of meeting people who are very excited about the farm, which is really good. Biodiversity, there's a pond in each field, interestingly, and there is actually we've spotted lots of different types of bird. Someone spotted a barn owl the other night as well in one of the barns. But yeah, we've got a big bird list. Chris says that he's actually started keeping a list of what he hasn't seen. But it's really interesting. One of the sessions that we're doing is about biodiversity, one of the webinar sessions. So do come along to that, because Mike, who's running it, came to have a look around the farm, and has been, him and Andrea, another of our members, have been sort of looking at, well, how could you improve the habitat for biodiversity? And there's lots of potential. While there is already lots of biodiversity, there's lots of potential for more as well, so that's great. The buildings, so they need a lot of work, the buildings, but there's lots of them, and that means there's lots of potential for our future plans. They're also, because our future plans of the Social Enterprise Hub and the Centre for Social Change aren't immediate, they're not to do with this share offer. That is just about the farming side of things. It's not, we don't, as long as we sort of make them weatherproof for the winter, we don't have to do anything on these buildings until we raise the finance. So we don't feel under any pressure to do anything quickly, and we're just sort of gradually making sure that they're safe and that they're weatherproof, and they're really great. So this is looking from the house out to the courtyard. And then there's kind of other buildings. Those vehicles aren't ours. Everyone keeps saying those are amazing vehicles, but they're not ours. They've moved or will be moving. But yeah, great agricultural buildings for us to just get on with stuff straight away. So that's really, it's got loads of potential, the farm. I'm not going to talk loads about this unless I can come back to it if people have questions. But basically it's just to say the process, as I say, the process of buying the farm is actually really really tight timescale because they wanted to have sold it before the end of their company year, which was the 30th of March. And we completed at 9:30 on the 30th of March. It was quite crazy. And really, because they only accepted our offer just before Christmas, it all didn't start really until January. So it was it was quite a crazy process, and lots of it happening in parallel. So basically the first thing was to get our offer accepted, which again, that was quite a lot of negotiation because other people were putting offers in as well, obviously, but they'd separated the farm into lots. Lots of farms do that. Agents recommend that lots of farms do that now, but the family actually really wanted to sell it as a whole farm, so they were very keen for us to buy it, and they've been super supportive the whole way through, and they want to buy community shares, which is really lovely, and stay involved in it, and we believe that they could have got more money if they'd sold it off in different lots. So we feel really happy that we've got a good value for the farm. It was actually we paid just what the valuation report recommended. Actually, it was we'd offered the right amount, which is great. So the process of securing the finance, so we had 970,000 available from the last community shares campaign. Originally, we were just going to apply for the rest as a loan, a bank loan, and we'd had discussions about this with the bank. But then working with one of the funders that we've worked with in the past, who are really supportive again, they said, because the cost of loans has gone up so much in the last couple of years, they offered us a very much cheaper bridging loan, which they've given us for a year, and to try and raise more in community shares, both because of trying to bring down the cost of the loan, but also to involve more people. And especially now we know where it is, we're hoping that more of the local community and the Liverpool community would want to invest, as well as just because it is really exciting to see the farm. So we hope that more people will want to be part of it. As part of the process, we are kind of having these negotiations with both the bank and the funder, and sort of meeting all of those conditions. We also decided to get the standard mark assessment, that you can get a standard mark for community shares, just to make sure that people feel they can trust, and that other people have looked at our business plan and our figures and our documents and everything. So we did that, and so that was all happening in parallel as well, and was quite a big process, because although we already had a business plan, we had to completely redo it and redo all the figures based on this particular farm, and because everything had changed and the costs had changed and the markets had changed, so we kind of did a lot of work on that at the same time. And then the legal process, obviously we had to appoint a solicitor, but then just doing all of the due diligence, and then all the information you ask, they have to provide, and then they want information from you. And so it's all, I mean, I'd never actually had to do this before for a house or anything, so it was all new to me, but it's really interesting, and people are used to doing things sort of slowly and bit by bit, more linear. And because we just needed everything to happen at once to be able to meet the timeline, there was a lot of phoning and persuading that they needed to do it a lot quicker. And then the negotiations about the contract as well with the vendor's solicitor. So it was all a lot of fun and very interesting, and we did manage to do it, but it was quite time. So the really great thing was that, again, because the family wanted it to be us, we just kept talking to them the whole way through, because I think it was very stressful for them. So then just quickly, preparing the next steps. So now we're on the farm. We kind of all happened a bit suddenly. We have just been on the farm for 2 weeks. We're really lucky in that the neighbours, so across the road, farmers living across the road, have farmed this farm for years, since the father of the people selling it died. They had it contracted out, and the people across the road were farming it. So they know the farm really well. And what our first step has been that we wanted to sow green manure. So we've got a really great green manure seed mix that just arrived the other day. They've been ploughing the fields for us, and are going to be planting the seed. We're really hoping that it's going to dry out enough for them to plant the green manure, sow the green manure by the end of this week. So that is great. And the idea of that is that we will leave that for a year while we're sorting out all of the infrastructure and the and just let the soil, just give the soil a bit of a break basically, and give it a bit of a fertility boost, and then we'll start planting veg next year, which is really exciting. A bit of improving the infrastructure is the other thing we're doing. This is actually just earlier today, so just lots of things, lots of unexpected things crop up, but again, the neighbours are just absolutely brilliant, and you can just ring them and go, have you got a digger, and they'll come and sort it out. So it's amazing. We feel very, very lucky and supported. Involving our members and the local community. So obviously we've got all the members from the previous Share Off campaign. This is just a silly photo of the children. We're not really getting children to do all the clearing up, but we, you know, part of the some people, not everyone, but some investors really want to come and be hands-on help, and then other investors are supporting us with their financially and from afar, which is also great. But yeah, we're looking at ways to just make the farm kind of safe enough and have enough facilities for people to be able to come along and get involved. And also because it's new community to us, this area of Knowsley, we're doing lots of going out and chatting to people, talking to different groups, and we've had a really amazing welcome. People are very excited about coming along and using the farm for different groups. And then the community shares campaign, that's the other thing. So I took this screen grab earlier today, but I've just had a little message from Chris. Oh, that's exciting. We've just been given another bit of match investment, so that's really exciting. I think of £50,000. So what that does is it's the same. We had £25,000 from Booster, where if people invested, you know, £200, it would be matched by match investment of £200. So it just it means that the target amount goes up. But I believe that we are just, I know that another 2,000 has gone in because someone told me. So I believe we are potentially just below the 100,000 mark, which is our minimum targets. That's very exciting times. So the community shares offer is running until the 1st of July. You go to the FX website, you do need to register on FX, and that what they do is before you can invest, you have a 24-hour cooling period, just in case you've listened to this exciting presentation and got really excited and decide to invest. They want to make sure that you've really thought about it, read the share offer document. So it's really good. It's really safe and supportive process. The way we've done it is that you can request up to 3% return on your investment. That was for advice from other community shares campaign projects, because they were saying that some people just don't want to request interest, and they want to do it because they're supporting you, and other people do. So we've given a varied amount of interest that you can request. You can't withdraw within the first 3 years. That's about sort of giving a bit of stability to the business while it grows, and then the returns begin in year 3. So you would start accruing your interest rate in year 3. Our minimum target is 100,000, which hopefully we are just about to be at. The optimum target is 400, and that's because we want to pay that would pay back the bridging loan. And then the maximum target, I mean, that would be amazing. That would be the farm bought through community shares if we've got 900,000. How you can get involved? You can basically, spreading the word would be amazing. We've got various other webinars happening, as I say. I think I'll come to that in a minute, but let people know about those, because even if people don't want to invest, they're really interesting, useful webinars that hopefully people will be able to use on their own projects themselves, their own initiatives. We will, at some point, as soon as we have the facilities in place and toilets, we just need more than one toilet, we will have volunteering opportunities at the farm. So that'll be ways to get involved. And also lots of our members have really brilliant experience. Our members so far and have been just kind of saying, do you want to help on planning? Do you want to know this? So yeah, any advice is also other ways to be involved. And also, of course, investing yourself if you can. We try and make it as accessible as possible. So we have a minimum share of £200 for this share offer. You can invest with someone else. People have bought it for their grandchildren. You can do that with a group of friends. We know people that have done that, and we are hoping that we have secured something where if people want to invest but don't think they can, that can't afford the 200 all at once, where we can support people with a loan from the Cooperative and Community Bank, I think they're called, or something like that. And they will give us a loan so we can then let people invest gradually over 8 months. I realise I've really rambled on, so I'm going to stop. But we have got, if you don't get to ask your questions, there are some other webinars that we're doing that was like sort of, there's the surgeries where people can just come on and ask us questions, and I promise not to talk for the whole hour. And then there's also these webinars, which I think will be great, one about biodiversity, one about renewable energy, and one about how we could make the most of our sort of the eco building opportunities, and looking at examples of, if you had all the money in the world to throw at these things, what would you do? And if you didn't have all the money in the world and were starting from this position, what would you do? So I think all of those will be really interesting. And there we go. That is, I really am going to stop talking and stop sharing. Oh, someone's just come in who. So let me just see. I think there might be, let's have a look. There might be some things in the chat already. Oh, so someone says, I did the commercial growers course with you, Helen, and I'm in York tonight and keeping busy on the path to growing. Brilliant. That's great. Has anyone got any questions that either they would like to ask out loud if they're happy to, or?
Are you thinking of having any livestock at any time, starting with chickens maybe or something?
No, so we're not doing livestock. There's various reasons for that. One is because we don't have that experience, so our focus has always been on growing veg and fruit.
Yeah.
Another reason is also because when we kind of looked at the food system as a whole, it felt like a lot of we could actually be self-sustaining in the UK. We have enough kind of meat and dairy produced in the UK. What we really have a problem with is fruit and veg, and we don't. A lot of that is imported and weirdly exported as well. I always find that a bit bizarre. And so what we feel is we need to produce more organic fruit and veg, and that because that's what we all know as kindling farmers.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's great. Yeah.
We have inherited a couple of cockerels, which are wandering or will be wandering around. Eggs. They will be, no, they don't, but they do know how to wake you up in the morning. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. That's good. It looks great.
Oh, thank you, Sarah.
Hiya. I was just wondering about your link. I'm from the area. Knowsley is one of the most deprived areas in the country, and I think you've obviously got these links with Manchester, but I'm interested to know how you're planning to sort of filter out the fruit and the food and into that local area. And another sort of pointer for you is sort of towards Liverpool University and what they've got to offer. They've got Greens for Good, which is an urban farm. I don't know whether you've heard of that. That's actually, they use agroponics or something like that, they vertical growing in the Baltic Triangle, and they distribute within Liverpool. So it'd be interesting to know whether you could team up more with what's going on in our area
too. Absolutely. So one of the things that's a really good question, thank you. So we basically, because we've had our fingers burnt a little bit with farms before, and with we waited until we knew we'd completed before we started making a lot of connections, and that was just because in the past we have made connections with people and then we haven't ended up being in that area, and it's just really, it's been sad for us and them, so we haven't done that. But we have kind of been looking out there, and there's a Liverpool growers network that I've been invited to go to in a couple of weeks' time, and I actually went to something at One Knowsley, which is kind of the voluntary sector thing, and met loads of people who are really excited about what we're doing. Like, we definitely want to bring kids to Mind and Spirit, I think they're called, want to bring kids to come and visit, and young people. So it feels like, even though we didn't get to do any of that before we came here, there's loads of potential. And I absolutely agree. I think I was thinking we could start a competition between Liverpool and Manchester universities to get them to see how involved and how much veg they want to buy. And absolutely, so a lot of what we do in Woodbank is about kind of trying to create access to food as well. So we're very aware of that. So with the veg bag, we have the small bag always stays at the same price, but we also do like the cooking and welfare and growing stuff, and have a community garden and do stuff like that. And it's very much about looking at how do we make food accessible whilst also paying growers properly, and trying to look at that. But yeah, thank you. And do give us a shout. I'll put my email address here, but we really want to have as much connection as possible with people locally, and so yeah, do definitely get in touch with me if you will.
Okay, yeah,
that's great. Jenna.
Yeah, so I'll jump in now as the University of Manchester person, but kind of not sort of wearing that hat, but not really. Yeah, I mean, it's just really exciting, what you're doing, and I guess so. My question is, but very specifically, is around, and maybe this is something to kind of chat about offline, but is how to strengthen the connection as well between Bridge Mill 5 and say like the neighbourhoods that surround Ancoats, like Miles Platting and Newton Heath. So yeah, kind of getting back to the point about kind of deprivation. So Miles Platting and Newton Heath has the highest multiple deprivation in Manchester, and obviously Bridge Mill 5 is kind of literally there, basically in the same neighbourhood. But I think it'd be good to try and strengthen that relationship between Bridge Mill 5 and between those estate residents, because there's a lot of interest in kind of like community gardening and and we're doing a lot of, and in the work I'm doing at the moment around kind of communities and climate resilience, there's a lot of interest. So it's kind of like trying to draw on expertise or looking at where there can be relationships between, say, neighbourhoods like Miles Platting and Newton Heath in Manchester with those in Knowsley, so there's that exchange as well in terms of shared experiences and things, so people don't feel quite like they're on their own, and so there's that kind of urban exchange, as it were.
Definitely. So I'm basically working in Miles Platting and Newton Heath, so happy to help try and to see how we can strengthen that relationship. We did when we first many moons ago, more than I want to admit, when we first moved into Bridge 5 Mill, did loads of, I spent my whole time going around coffee mornings and various different things, chatting to people, and we set up a little mobile fruit and veg van there and did things. I know there actually is, I think there is one in Knowsley already. We met someone the other day from Global Feedback organisation, who said they're doing something to do with the fruit and veg van in Knowsley, so we would more supply them, because again, it sort of depends what's already there. We don't want to walk into an area and tread on everyone's toes, so it's very much about getting to know what's somewhere and then working with them. And Bridge 5 Mill has a veg box collection point as well, and so doing stuff like that, definitely. Great. Is there any other questions? Thanks, Sarah. What have we got here? Keen to visit as a member from the first campaign. When do you envisage the visits will be? So the hope is, so basically we are just basically getting the facilities right for to make sure we've got one toilet at the moment, and what we'd love to do is set up a sort of field kitchen or something, so that there's kind of the facilities for people to come and visit for the day, and we're going to do some sort of working volunteering weekends and things like that. So yeah, as soon as we can do that, as soon as we feel we can safely and reasonably host people, we will put a shout out. We'll definitely put a shout out to the members, and also we'll do like some local community open days and stuff, because people are really keen to do that. So yes, we definitely will. We've got other questions. Any other questions? Oh, would you get schools involved at some stage? Oh, I think Sarah's gone, but yes, we would. One of the things at Woodbank Community Food Hub is that we're not quite big enough to have whole classes visit or anything like that, whereas this farm, plenty of space. So we just have to work out kind of how to do that. Again, how to make it interesting. We do lots of things like at Woodbank we do things like bat walks, and got a dawn chorus coming up on the, I think it's the 7th of May, which is a really lovely one. We've got some people that know birdsong, which is great, so you kind of go along. There's loads of birds here as well, so they're just really lovely things to do. And again, when we did the agroforestry, the grafting, apple grafting sessions, we involved schools in that. So yeah, we'd love to do that. Got any other questions from anyone? Absolutely fine if not. I'm wondering if Alison is typing one in. You're not, you're doing something else. If any other questions, feel free to ask, or if not, also, another one, need to go, that is fine. No worries. But yeah, it's absolutely fine. We're going to stop in about 9 minutes anyway. But if there are also, we are going to be having the online surgeries. I think there was I think that the FX will be sending out information about that as well. But do give me a shout if you're not already registered with FX and you do have questions about when any of the events that we're doing are on. Just my email is in there. It's helen@kindling.org.uk. So just come along, ask me if you need to know when those sessions are, and we can send you links to those. And definitely come along. I think the other sessions, the other Eventbrite sessions, are going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to them. But yeah, for now then, I will love you and leave you all. Thank you so much for coming and giving up an hour of your evening, and hopefully look forward to seeing you on the farm at some point in the future. And thank you so much. Bye-bye. Margaret, do you want to stay on? Because I realised that you didn't get let in. I didn't see you in the waiting room. Oh, you're on mute. Are you still there? Do you know how? Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Let me just end recording. Hold on. Stop recording.